Thanks so much for watching Morning Live. Now, there have been several big stories that have dominated the headlines this week. The EFF's attempts to stop Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan from speaking in Parliament yesterday. Earlier this week, we saw former Chief of State Protocol Bruce Koloane appearing before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, and he spoke about his role in helping a Gupta chartered flight to land at the Waterkloof Air Force Base in 2013. And Koloane, who is now the ambassador to the Netherlands, admitted to name dropping and also using then President Jacob Zuma's name to speed up the process. Also earlier in the week, the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan lodging papers in court to interdict the Public Protector's remedial action from being enforced. Political analyst Aubrey Matshiqi is with us to discuss some of the week's news developments. Thanks so much for coming through.
Good morning. Thank you.
Let's start with Pravin Gordhan. So the latest years, of course, what transpired in Parliament yesterday with the EFF coming out saying he is the Jacob Zuma of the 6th Parliament. They wouldn't allow him to speak, at least not while they were there. And of course, setting a tone, giving us a sense of how they will approach at least him in this particular set of circumstances. But there's a lot more around Pravin. Pravin versus the Public Protector, and the Minister and the Public Protector clearly at loggerheads, and he approached the courts. But what are the objective facts around what is going on between the Public Protector and Minister Pravin Gordhan with the rogue unit and, of course, the remedial action that she's expecting the President to institute?
Well, remember that this is primarily a political battle. And therefore, it's going to be very difficult until the matter goes to court to establish what the objective facts are. But as things tend to happen in politics, the political process may outrun the judicial or legal processes, because what may matter in the end is what is going to happen in the court of public opinion. So in this battle, the victors are the ones who are going to win hearts and minds and therefore win the battle in the court of public opinion. It's not uninteresting that the EFF refers to Mr. Gordhan as the Zuma of today, because all of these things around Pravin Gordhan, his battle against the Public Protector, the President's battle in relation to the Public Protector too, all of this is part of the same dynamic. It's the Polokwane moment. What this says is that the Polokwane moment is still with us. It is a moment that is refusing to die, to the extent that the Polokwane moment produced the decline that the ANC is still going through. That decline produced the factionalism the ANC is still going through, and that decline produced the Zuma presidency, and it produced the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa too. And another thing, of course, which produced the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa is a very narrow conception of state capture, and Pravin Gordhan is right at the center of that narrow conception of state capture.
Now, Pravin Gordhan going to the courts, the rogue unit issue does not want to die. So the Public Protector was very clear in that she expects the President to actually implement her remedial action, the recommendations that she put forward, and said only a court of law can set it aside. If we look at the actions now that Pravin Gordhan has taken, does that mean that this is an admission that the Public Protector was indeed correct in her assertion?
Well, you are right to ask what the objective factors are, because when it comes to the Pravin Gordhan matter, there has been a lot of Orwellian manipulation, and the media to some extent has been an instrument through which this Orwellian manipulation has occurred. For instance, there's been a deliberate attempt, in my view, to confuse the matter by confusing an appeal with a review application. Because a review application has two parts. If you want to suspend the remedial action of the Public Protector, Part A is about interdicting the Public Protector from having the recommendations or remedial action implemented. And then Part B would be about reviewing the remedial action itself in court. Whereas in an appeal, the moment papers are lodged, whatever the decision of the court was will be held in abeyance. Now, there has been an attempt, even by those who should know better, to confuse the two, because even those who should know better legally are thinking politically. And that is why I think we are at a moment where the factionalism of the ANC, the decline of the ANC, and therefore the Orwellian manipulation is a vortex that is sucking everything. It is sucking the media, it is sucking the commentariat, and it is sucking politicians across the political lines.
So, is this an admission by him that she was indeed correct?
Well, he will deny, and his lawyers will deny that it is an admission by him. But in effect, that's what it constitutes. But it also indicates that there might be a perception that Pravin Gordhan is facing a very fierce political battle. Because to the extent that the Polokwane moment is a continuum, which is producing even what is going on inside and outside the ANC today, it is quite possible that when we look at the Pravin Gordhan matter, not only, as I said, the media or even lawyers and us commentators are getting sucked into this, but we also find that other interests outside the ANC, such as business, are getting sucked into this, such as the markets are getting sucked into this. And that is why, for instance, you see the ANC fighting over what decision was made over the Reserve Bank, fighting even over what the powers of the public protectors are. So there's a perception here to portray or project the public protector as an entity that is acting politically, that has entered the ANC's factional battles. At the same time, around Pravin Gordhan, you have two problems. Those who like him seem to be taking the view that he is infallible, whereas those who do not like him take the view that he is the devil incarnate. Those who like him tell us that he cannot be guilty of corruption or anything like that because he is very competent. And I agree, he is a very competent man. But the reality is that incompetent people lie and steal, competent people lie and steal, and the devil is competent. Now, I'm not suggesting Pravin Gordhan is the devil, but what I'm suggesting is that this narrow conception of state capture, with the Orwellian manipulation that goes with it, has produced a narrative in which Pravin Gordhan is either infallible or is the devil.
Let's talk about the EFF and their behavior. We are at the beginning of the 6th Parliament at this stage, and already they have made it clear how they will behave in the 6th Parliament. What's your take on that?
Well, remember, to some extent, the EFF is part of this Polokwane continuum I'm talking about, because the EFF, to some extent, is a product of the ANC's decline, and is therefore part of this continuum of internal factional battles inside the ANC, albeit an external dimension of the ANC decline at the moment. I think it's very clear that the EFF has decided that one of its main battles in Parliament during this 6th term is to undermine Pravin Gordhan. And that has a history. Even from the time when people like Julius Malema were in the ANC Youth League, there was a battle between them and Pravin Gordhan. There was a perception that he used state institutions, he used this position to try and undermine them or disadvantage them. And therefore what you see here is a continuation of that battle. Again, because of the Orwellian manipulation, we will be given the impression that the actors are acting nobly when actually their motives are a mixture of both the noble and the ignoble.
Now, wish we could unpack that further, but we don't have time. Let's move on to the judicial commissions of inquiry that are currently sitting. We've got the PIC Commission and, of course, the State Capture Commission. Let's start with State Capture. Bruce Koloane, the former head of State Protocol, testifying and saying, well, it started with him being unable to recall much. But then there were tapes produced into evidence, and that jogged his memory somewhat, and he admitted to name dropping in order to facilitate the now infamous landing of that privately chartered flight by the Guptas at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. What did you make of what transpired at the State Capture Commission this week?
Well, if you remember, Mr. Koloane was first demoted in the aftermath of the Waterkloof saga, and then got this plum job as ambassador in Netherlands. Listening to him, it is very difficult to believe that he has been completely truthful with the commission of the country. So I'm still open to the possibility that Mr. Koloane did not tell us everything.
Do you believe that he should be recalled given what has come out of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry? Because there are now calls. It seems that society is mobilizing. You have hashtags floating around on social media saying he should be relieved of his duty as ambassador to the Netherlands.
My short answer is yes.
Right, and then moving on to the other commission, PIC's Dan Magila, the former CEO there. And again, quite harrowing tales of political meddling and interference, and people who are either politically connected or the politicians themselves strong-arming those working at the PIC to influence certain investment decisions.
Well, again, the things that are coming out of the PIC commission are an indication of the extent to which the decline of the ANC compromised the party itself, compromised the state, and compromised the country. But what is unfortunate about what is emerging in these commissions is the impression that it is black professionals who are corrupt. I think the image of black professionals is being compromised because of what is coming out of these commissions. Whereas, in essence, for us to get to the bottom of what happened, we need to accept that all this corruption could not have happened without the help of rogue bankers, without the help of rogue accountants, without the help of rogue auditing firms, and so on. And therefore, it must go to that level. Who are the rogue bankers? Who are the rogue lawyers? Who are the rogue accountants? What are the rogue accounting firms that facilitated the kind of corruption we are hearing about in the Zondo Commission and the PIC Commission?
Do you think that we will get there? Do you think that we will dig down that far? And are we able and willing to take those unpopular steps?
Remember that this corruption emerged as elite interests started competing and conflicting. And I think to some extent the elites will settle. They always do. They will settle and sacrifice the smaller fish amongst themselves.
Well, so much I wish we could talk about, but that's our time. And that, of course, Aubrey Matshiqi talking to us there about some of the news developments this week, giving us his analysis on the matter.